Warning, this video is intended for adult collectors. It contains plastic collectibles, questionable opinions, and someone who knows a lot about Japanese spandex. Incoming random review in 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1323 of our daily content grind. I think it's safe to say that I'm getting kind of comfortable just doing reviews here on the weekends for this channel, which is not a bad thing. I don't really get to talk about new Transformers as much as I used to, so let's just start doing that again, and we'll do it this week with our brand new 86 Constructicons, starting with Scrapper here. And this one is one of those kind of toys where a lot of reviews are important because there's some different circumstances with this particular figure that's going to make this a hard purchase for a lot of people out there, and we will explain why in a bit. But for starters, let's get the obvious out of the way. He is your traditional Constructicon payloader in the lime green color scheme. Though here, the green is a lot more faded than it has been on past Constructicons. In particular, it is a duller shade of green than, say, Combiner Work Devastator that we reviewed just a bit ago. And I don't mind that. For starters, I'm not going to mind any shade of green, but also, yeah, it's a little bit easier on the eyes, it's a little bit more mild, and yes, it's a little bit closer to animation colors, so there is that. So, you can see on the back here, I have already loaded him up with his weaponry. Now, he's going to come with the animation accurate gun that hangs off the back there, but the only things that are really pointing forward is going to be the big Devastator cannon, which is 2 separate pieces on this release. So you're actually getting 3 weapon accessories, including the 2 large ones, and we'll see how those work out later on. The thing to point out now, however, is the fact that while the Devastator rifle can be mounted like this as a side weapon, I have yet to find any place where his actual gun can go outside of just being tabbed into the back in order to store it, which is a little unfortunate. Like, there's no 5mm pegs across this toy that I can just connect this to, and there is a hole on it, but I haven't found any like position where I can just peg it into place. I just found a place where I can peg it in. Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay, so it's got a little bit more versatility than I thought. It's a silly spot though, I'll give it that. That's not the point. Let's get this stuff off so we can have a nice clean look at the payloader mode. Now, you will notice those tab slots in the back. We do know that when the Commander set comes out, the Devastator wing that forms his chest armor will fit on the back of Scavenger here, just like the OG toy will. So you get a little bit of the old school play value out of it. That's what you've got those slots for. But speaking of the original toy, this is way bulkier as a payloader than the original figure is. And partially because it is doing a lot of different things with its bulk. Part of it is to modernize it, I guess, as well, but a lot of it is just because, like, this is all arm. And to give him animation-accurate arms, and not those little twigs he had in the original toy, they couldn't just make them, like, super skinny rails that just kind of squeezed into the side here. So we get a much thicker payloader vehicle mode than we're used to out of Scrapper. And it's not a necessarily bad thing outside of, you know, creating some gaps around the top here. Hi, robot mode hips, how you doing? So yeah, not a lot of paint deco to talk about in this mode. I mean, the hubs of the wheels are painted silver. That's nice to see. That's one of those things that used to get skipped a lot in past years. You do have driver windows that are painted in purple, so that gives you a little bit of color there, but it's really not a lot. So, in other words, it's pretty accurate to the original toy and the original design. I don't know if you've looked at a piece of construction equipment lately. Not a lot of paint. You've got the base coat for the main color, and that's about it. They don't exactly put racing stripes on these things. So deco-wise might be a little bit dull, but it's 100% traditional. So there is that. Does roll nicely, though, if I'm not using a glass countertop. That's a bit of a weakness in my demonstration game, I will admit. I do like how solid it looks all the way around. Like, even in the rear, yeah, like just two big solid blocks, though there are some gaps here and there because there are robot mode separation things. So that's basically what you got for the vehicle mode. Now, keep in mind, what you're looking at here is a Voyager class toy, because that's how they're getting all these toys out within the same calendar year, and there's some extra engineering going on in order to make sure this works as a Devastator leg. So, for starters, let me go ahead and do that. This will hinge very firmly into this position. It's relying on these long tabs to hold itself as Devastator's foot. I wish it held a little bit more securely, but time will tell. I'm going to need a full-size Devastator to see how well that holds. But for the foot mode, all you're really going to do is open up the arms, rotate them 180 degrees, and then snap them back with these tabs into these slots in order to give him a solid heel, which is the other reason for the big bulky arms in this position. And that's going to be the leg once you have your full Devastator. The important part here is that ratchet joint, which is going to give him an ankle tilt the original did not have. I say the original. Of course, the original didn't have it. The Combiner War version, like, we're getting a higher articulation Devastator out of this, which is cool to see. Yeah, so very, very simple, but that's going to be the leg. But let's go to the robot mode, and we'll see what you're actually getting as far as just an independent toy. So I'm going to keep all this in its current arrangement just to make sure everything's clear. I'm going to open up both sides, and I love how this kind of comes around. So snap the feet off of these panels, like so. Go ahead and fold these all the way down. Same spot will snap in here. There we go. That's going to be the feet. Go ahead and open up the legs. That out of the way, I can now rotate this, which is going to clear it out of the way of the waist joint. Pull the arms out. Rotate them down like so. Elbows are going to bend all the way over to the front. Hands fold out like that. Then just open up the chest. Flip the head out on a hinge. Close everything back up nice and tight. And basically, that's your transformation to robot mode. He's not a complex character, but then again, the Constructicons were never a complex design. That's how the combining works. But yeah, not too bad. Pretty quick, pretty clean transformation. I do like the trick of the leg transformation, where the bottom and top of the rear vehicle open up and then recombine into a solid lower leg. That's actually a pretty cool trick. Everything else, pretty bare bones, but it doesn't have to be overly complicated if it works. So, not one for those who really need an interesting or dynamic transformation. Okay, that said, it's not looking too bad proportion-wise. I can give you a close-up of the head, though honestly, you're not missing a whole lot of detail here. Yeah, Scrapper's head is just a little bit basic. Nothing terribly wrong with that. I still think he looks fine. The flat top is always how I mentally imagine him, so that's I'm kind of glad they left that in. It's amusing to me. But yeah, nice silver face paint, nice red shade there on the for the eye visor. Nice details on the chest too. I like that they worked in a little bit of asymmetric detail in there. Yeah, he's a cool looking guy. just not the most complex head design, that's all. Now, a big detraction to this toy is going to be the size for the price, because it is a $35 Voyager class toy, even though he's definitely a good bit smaller than your standard Voyager. And keep in mind, there are much larger Voyager toys than Sentinel Prime. He's getting to be a little bit smaller because of his extra modes and his density. There are bigger Voyager class toys out there. So Scrapper is among the smallest Voyagers we've seen, more along the lines of how the 86 Ironhide turned out. Though whereas that toy was smaller because of its complexity, this one is smaller for a few other reasons. Number one, the engineering going into Devastator, but also because when we get to Bone Crusher, I'll be reviewing tomorrow, you're going to find he's actually a little bit bigger than your standard deluxe. So in order to balance out the budget, one gets to be bigger, one gets to be smaller. That way they're the same size. One gains in a price point, the other one loses. It's just how they're balancing it out so we can get all the Constructicons out in 1 year. That's just how it goes. It's weird distribution toy thing. Like the retailers are to blame as much as Hasbro. I don't think it's a bad method, but you are just gonna you got to sit back and realize you're buying this for the whole set, not individual toys. So let's just keep looking at him as an individual toy, because that's all we really can do right now. I've never liked how the shovel on this toy, on this design in general, just kind of floats behind and just sticks that far out from the top of his back. Thankfully, you do have plenty of hinges, so you can come up with your own configuration. I kind of prefer it that way. It does have a very large back space, like it does stick out the back quite a bit, but it does lower the profile of it, and it still gives me that like scoop in the back of his, behind his head look. So I'm not missing his silhouette here, but it does look a little bit cleaner to me. That said, yeah, it still is never going to be the cleanest because that's just how the toy is designed. But overall, yeah, like proportionally, I don't mind him. He looks pretty good. Everything I expect on Scrapper is there. Silver on the legs, the purple done really, really well. Not a whole lot of deco to talk about, but again, if you're going for screen accuracy, this is still technically correct. And I guess at that point, we get into articulation is usually next on my rundown, so we can do that. Head, yep, 360-degree rotation. It is on that hinge, so you can use it for a little up and down, but it might make the chest open up. You have that weird shoulder faux universal joint, where it's jointed at the torso, but also has a hinge up here. There's also, strangely enough, a little bit of a butterfly joint here. Can I actually, yep, if I want to expand him, can get that joint out, and that gives him full butterfly motion. So kind of cool to be able to do that. Widens his shoulder stance a little bit if you prefer it that way. Now, biceps, yep, full rotation above the elbow. Elbow is 90 degree, though we also saw it bends backwards too if you want to do that for some reason. Waist joint isn't there. So yeah, so recall how like this whole transformation point was, should supposedly clear the waist joint so you can actually move it. Yeah, turns out there is none, which is weird. It's kind of weird because I figured with all the budgeting going on to make sure like they could get all, they could make what's technically a deluxe into a Voyager. Kind of figured that would be part of it, but I'm assuming because it has to be attached to this big old thing, which is, the ankle of Devastator, they sacrifice the waist joint for the stability of the combiner, which I guess we have to accept. To continue, we do have universal hip joint. That works exactly the way I would like it to. 360 degrees at the thigh. Knee bend right there, and then, of course, the ankle tilt. So, no slouch in the articulation department, but where he gains that butterfly joint, he loses the waist articulation, which is unfortunate. But I guess if he's going to be stable as an ankle for Devastator, yeah, you got to make sure his midsection is as solid as possible. So it's frustrating, but I also kind of get it. Well. So we do still have room for accessories. So he does, as we mentioned, have his little gun that's not... I don't believe this is the one that the toy had, but animation-wise, it is accurate to the one his character model was used with. And then we have the Devastator guns, because this is how you get a little bit more bang for your buck out of the toy. So he can just use that rear section of the cannon as one big blaster, but if you want him a little bit more heavily armed, you can also swap this in, which just kind of looks like a giant magnum. That's fine. You know, it gives you a little bit more accessory play. It's a little bit more impactful. He is supposed to be the leader of the Constructicons, so it doesn't surprise me that he would have bigger armaments than the others. And you can just make the Devastator rifle if you, for some reason, want Scrapper to be a full sniper. Or you can take it back to the way you had it in the vehicle mode, which is to use that 5mm port on the end, and that gives you a double barrel cannon, and that lets you use his other pistol as well. So very, very well armed. I will give him that. Though again, it's kind of odd, the lack of 5mm ports across the toy. That said, he's got them on the bottom of his feet. I can't get any in the vehicle mode, but I can get him on the bottom of his feet for some reason. That might be a Devastator combination thing. I don't know. But that's Studio Series Scrapper. It's definitely a toy that has to be what it is. You know, it is small for a Voyager. The transformation is simple for a Voyager. All of that is going into making sure he is the same size as the other Constructicons, and he's solid enough for his role as a part of the Devastator combination. But if you look at it in that larger scheme, then that's fine. You know, ultimately, you're going to be buying all 6 Constructicons anyway. So add up the total price of all of them, divide it by 6, that's what you actually paid for all of your Constructicons. This is just how they had to release this one. If you're looking at it as an individual toy and you're just getting the one, I don't know why you would only get one Constructicon, but you're out there, I know you are. It is going to be a little bit disappointing. Like, this is not nearly as fully featured in articulation or transformation as a Voyager toy typically would be. So it's definitely sacrificing for the whole here. But overall, at the very least, it's not a bad representation of Scrapper. As a toy, it just doesn't do a lot for its price point. So there you go. That is the review of Scrapper. Tomorrow we'll be reviewing Bone Crusher, and we'll see how the other one turned out. Well, the other very similar vehicle. But thank you for watching. Do appreciate it. And as always, I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.